This is the Senior Community Center's Something to Talk About programs. We meet Monday, Wednesday, and Friday right here at 1:30 in the afternoon on Zoom. We also sometimes meet in person as well. The programs are sponsored by Fieldstone Communities of Bainbridge Island, which offers memory care and is in the process of constructing assisted living and independent living housing up on Rolling Bay. To learn more about that, to schedule a tour, or to find out about day stay and respite programs, call 360-689-4314. And we're going to be talking about the Bainbridge Community Foundation and their community grants program today. But before we do, I want to acknowledge that we are meeting on the ancestral homelands of the Coast Salish people, specifically our neighbors, the Suquamish tribe, and they have lived on these Salish sea waters since time immemorial. We are grateful for their stewardship, we honor them, and we appreciate their hospitality. And I would like to offer a warm welcome to Debbie Cuffle, who is the, let's see, your title is kind of
It's long.
Program and Finance Officer, I guess, for Bainbridge Community Foundation, but that involves managing a lot of the grant programs, right?
It is. Yeah, I wear two hats at the organization. I manage all of the grant making programs, our competitive grant making programs, which are the annual community grant cycle, as well as in the fall, our capacity building grants cycle, which is a much smaller grant making program, which is geared toward helping organizations with their internal processes in order to have them be a little more lean, effective, and efficient. Some of those training dollars.
We at the Senior Community Center have appreciated both of the grant making programs and taken advantage of them, as I know many of our nonprofit colleagues have. And that's not all the Community Foundation does. I've also been the recipient of your training and resources to make the nonprofit community stronger.
Yes, we've been really blessed to have Dana Benendijk join our team back at the very beginning of COVID in February of 2020. And she heads up a lot of those education programs as our community impact officer, and has just really done a great job with both analyzing data and needs, as well as those community programs.
So if someone is hearing this and not knowing what the Community Foundation is, we've touched on a couple of things, but would you like to kind of give a high level description of BCF?
Oh gosh, this is not what I normally do, but yes, the Bainbridge Community Foundation is a community foundation. That means we're based right here in your community, Bainbridge Island, Greater Kitsap area, and we are here kind of as the big long-term savings account. We're here in perpetuity, and our mission is to support the nonprofits in our community and help them become, help them support so that they can accomplish their missions. And we do this through, like we said, our grant making programs. We have area of interest funds, which are funds that have been set up to help support specific areas in our community. And those are things like youth education through our Yes Fund. We have an area of interest that's around preserving wild animal habitat around the Pacific Northwest and globally. I alluded to we have our community grant cycle, we have our capacity building grant cycle, but we also serve and have donor advised funds. And donor advised funds, the donor gets a tax advantaged donation at the time of the donation. The funds then stay with the foundation, they get the tax credit then, but then they retain the right to recommend grants to various 501c3 nonprofits, both right here in our community, but also across the United States. So I work with our fund advisors in their philanthropy and helping match needs both here locally as well as nationally with their interests.
And all of this information can be found on Bainbridge CF, as in Bainbridge Community Foundation, bainbridgecf.org.
Yes, we have a very robust, very informative website where you can find out information about our grant making programs, our funds, as well as all of the things that we've touched upon here today.
No, I kind of took the long route to what I was hoping we could talk about today, which is BainbridgeGives.org, which is the public facing part of this community grant cycle that you're administering right now. Let's talk a little bit about that program.
I would love to. And I'm going to back up a little bit and start at the beginning. So the community grant cycle is the overarching program that is that BainbridgeGives.org is a part of. So we look at at the community grant cycle as having three parts. The first part is the application phase, and that happened between mid-February and mid-March. And in that, we received 68 grant applications from 501c3 nonprofits from our community. Those are nonprofits based right here on Bainbridge, as well as in Kitsap and King County that happen to be serving either Bainbridge or Kitsap County residents. So that's a month-long window. We received 68 applications. And then we have the evaluation phase. And in that phase, we engaged with 53 community volunteers, 9 of whom were from our board, and the rest of them were either former board members or interested community members that really wanted to learn more about our nonprofit community and volunteered for our grants evaluation team, which lasts around 6 weeks. So it's intense volunteering, but then it's finished. You know, it's one of those things where you're not going to a committee meeting every month. So we send out evaluation team members in pairs, and we try and pair somebody we've done this before, that's reviewed these, knows the process, and we have them mentor a new volunteer, or we pair 2 seasoned volunteers together. And we keep them within their sector, and they're assigned 3, 4, or 5 different nonprofits to visit with and get to know. They perform a site visit, complete an evaluation, and then we get together within each one of these sectors, our nonprofit sectors, and make funding recommendations. So of those 68 grant applicants, 65 of those were approved for funding. So unfortunately, we did have to decline 3 of those applications, and we're hoping to talk with them so that next year when they reapply, they'll be in a much stronger state, and hopefully will be more successful with their application.
No, I don't want to go too deep into that, except to say that that one of the things that you're talking about there, I guess, is how to put together a proposal or a plan with an organization that looks like it's going to make sense and actually deliver on the promise. Is that?
Exactly. You know, some of the different challenges could be, you know, an organization's capacity to actually complete their proposal, or they're just brand new and, you know, we don't know them yet, and we want to see a little bit of a track record before we commit any grant making dollars to them. So there could be any number of reasons for an application to be declined, but we're really working hard and have changed our philosophy and worked diligently to become partners with our nonprofit community. And I say our because I like to think of them as my partner, and as at the foundation level as our partners, and not have this hierarchy of funder grantee. We really work hard to be partners. We want to support every nonprofit so that they can be as successful as they can be in, 1, fulfilling their grant application, but 2, fulfilling their mission, which is their whole reason for being. So that's sort of kind of how we approach it.
So when a grant, these 65 organizations were approved for funding.
Yeah.
What does that mean to be approved for funding?
Well, so what it means to be approved for funding is then that gets us into phase 3. Good question. And the phase 3 is our Bainbridge Gives section of our 3-phase community grant cycle. And this is the funding phase. And if an application has been approved for funding, it means that it has been reviewed and vetted by this grants evaluation team, and they believe that the application is sound, makes good sense, and heartily recommend this grant proposal. So once it's had that happen, for 1 month, between May 15th and June 15th, we have what we call Bainbridge Gives. And you can check out all of the approved applications at bainbridgegives.org. And we have those listed alphabetically. But if you're curious about which sector they fall in, each one of those has a descriptor, whether they're in the health, housing, and human services sector, the animal welfare sector, the arts, culture, humanities sector, the environment, etc. You can see how those are classified and learn a little bit more about those approved applications. So when you do log in to bainbridgegives.org, you can see how much money they requested for funding and how far they've been funded so far. So one of the things that different organizations sometimes think is, how does this get funded? And that might, I don't know if that's something you'd like to go over or not, Reed.
Well, it looks like to some degree, there's probably some money that the foundation has. And I noticed that when you went live at the end of May 15th, there were some small amounts of funding for various programs. And then those numbers have changed, I'm guessing, because people like myself might have gone on and given some money towards various projects or organizations.
That's it exactly. So the Bainbridge Board of Trustees each year, as part of their budget making process, approves a set number of dollars to go to seed the community grant cycle. Like last year, this year they approved $50,000 to help seed the community grant cycle. We also collect donations throughout the year for this purpose, and then we open bainbridgegives.org. So we put our own discretionary dollars in to help seed the request. And then we work with our fund advisors who have donor advised funds to the foundation, some private foundations, but then we also try and connect with the public to help publicize each one of these approved applications and highlight each one of these organizations publicly for this 1 month process. And then at June 15th, we close it up and we see where we are. And that then goes to our Board of Trustees for final approval on June 20th. And then on June 21st, I notify our organizations at the level to which they've been funded. And hopefully it's really great news. Last year, we started with this same $50,000. We had 60 approved applications, and we were able to fund over $561,000 to our community. So this year, with our 65 approved applications, the approved amount was a little over $603,000. So there's quite a big delta between the $50,000 that we're starting with and the $600,000 in requests that have been approved by our grants evaluation team. So that's what we're doing here, is just trying to.
Now that $50,000, you said that represents money that was approved by the BCF board, and it might also be joined with some designated funds that have been given throughout the year.
Right.
That does not represent, if I'm understanding you correctly, donors who are giving donor directed funds that are part of BCF.
No, that does not represent any of the donor directed or donor advised funds on behalf of BCF.
Those people could be giving at any time during this 1 month period.
They could indeed. And in fact, a little over half of the funds last year that were raised through the community grant cycle were provided by donor advised fund support. So they are an active partner in supporting.
So that means that you're actually raising, at least last year, half the money from the community at large.
Yes, indeed. And that's why we've asked, I did a specific outreach to our nonprofits, because there was some misunderstanding that we just had all of these dollars already in place and we're ready to bestow them in the form of grants. Unfortunately, we don't. I would give anything to be able to start with that as our backdrop. But unfortunately, I'm working very hard on our nonprofit's behalf, trying to fund these requests that have been approved. So that's kind of my job through mid-June, is really advocating and matchmaking our approved grant requests with, with our fund advisors as well as with the public at large.
And I would say, to me, as a nonprofit director, that's unusual. In many cases, what happens is that a organization that we're asking money for has a designated pool, be it $50,000 or $500,000, and they're going to divide that up based on their evaluation. And in this case, it's kind of open-ended during the course of this month, and you're depending on the community to help bridge the gap to make these programs fly.
Indeed, that is the approach. That's
Um,
what
and,
we're
and,
doing.
and you haven't done that all along. I mean, that's a relatively new, it's a transition within the last 5 years.
It's been the approach that we've taken. We've always partnered with our fund advisors to help fund the community grant cycle. It's been since 2016 or 2017 that we've opened up this online grants catalog to look for more crowdfunding for these proposals. One is that the grant requests back in 2012, we had 48 applications, and I thought we were doing great. We funded $139,000. And since then, it has just grown over time in 2022 and in 2020, our funding was over $500,000. So in order to help meet this increased need and demand by our nonprofit community, we've opened it up to the full community to help support them.
So, what kind of reaction have you gotten from nonprofits or from grantors? Do you feel like it's a good project? It's a good way to go?
So far, it has seemed to work. I always get nervous. The first half of this 4-week window, everybody kind of wants to see what's happening and where things are going. And there's usually not as much activity as there is in the second half. One, we're human, we're deadline driven. And I will be really, really busy that last week before June 15th. It's the process that's worked good for Bainbridge Community Foundation. It is not the process that all foundations approach their grant cycles with. But if you see one community foundation, you've only seen one community foundation. We're all very unique in the way that we're set up. And our foundation was not set up with a huge amount of endowment. Many foundations are transitions from hospitals or other medical foundations that have turned into community foundations, and they have a lot of assets. We have some assets, but we have lots of donor advised funds. And so we work in partnership with them to help support these community needs. This is a wonderful benefit that we provide to them, so that they can know that their investment in these different nonprofits, projects, and programs have been approved and have the so-called good seal of approval.
I can see how, if I were looking to try to designate money that I had already put into a tax protected fund, having the advice of this team of volunteers and former and present board members looking over what's going on in the community and beyond to give me some guidance would be very useful.
It seems to be a good way of going, and I know that many of our fund advisors really greatly appreciate it. I'm trying to think. I wanted to say something, but I lost my thought completely. Oh,
Okay. Oh.
I do know what I wanted to say, and I don't know that I have it up to share. But I noted that in the community grants, the online grants catalog at bainbridgegives.org, we have it separated by sector, what we call our different nonprofit sectors. But I'm going to have Dana put up online, because she's also our web mistress. And I have put together kind of a slice and dice of our different asks in different ways. And some of the categories I put together were, operations and mission support, access to programming, programs specifically for seniors, as well as internal systems. And internal systems is how I classified Bainbridge Island Senior Community Centers, because your request is unique and really is a smart approach to looking forward to a capital campaign. So I've been sharing that with some of our more savvy donors, because I just think it's smart thinking on from an organizational approach.
In a nutshell, since you brought it up, we're looking at we're reviving or revisiting work that was done in 2007, recognizing that the senior community is growing on Bainbridge Island, that the island itself has civic and community needs, and that the center is of limited size and scope, based on the fact that it was built originally in the mid 80s, and so the idea is to expand the center, and of course that's a big job, and it gets more expensive every year. And before we launch any kind of a major campaign, we felt that it was responsible to do a feasibility study to measure the capacity that we might have in a busy and active nonprofit environment. And so while the board of directors has directed some of our funds towards it, we're looking for community support in the realm of, we hope, about $10,000 to pay for what will be a $25,000 study to evaluate that need. So that's our item on that long list of suggestions of things that people might be working on.
And it's included, and we heartily support your request and forward thinking about how you might approach a capital campaign and garnering all that information that you would need to proceed. One thing, we were talking about Bainbridge Gives. We also, as part of Bainbridge Gives, we have a flyer that's gone out, and it should be in everyone's mailboxes today and next Friday as part of the Kitsap Suns. And you should get a flyer that looks something like that in everybody's mailbox. And within it are a listing of all of the different approved applications, as well as an overview of our process, so that if something is a little unclear here in our discussion this afternoon, maybe they'd find it in that flyer. That flyer can also be found on our website, talking about the community grant cycle and Bainbridge Gives. I believe the link is on our front page, maybe towards the middle left.
Let's see, maybe it's somewhere right about here where it says Bainbridge
I think where it says Bainbridge Gives, click on there. And I think if we scroll,
there's some information about it.
There.
That's the newsletter. There's the link to get Bainbridge Gives, which gives you the long list of the applicants, the list of 65. Plus there are a couple of funds at the beginning
there's a couple special purpose funds. The first one is our community grant making partner fund. When we're meeting, and then when I say we, the grants evaluation team, when they're looking at these different applications, they do make some funding level recommendations. Most of them really just want full funding for all of the organizations. So any dollars that are donated to the BCF community grant making partner fund are then used to backfill and try and reach those full funding levels, or funding levels as recommended by the grants evaluation team. Say, you don't have time, or you're not interested in specific organizations, but you want to, support this process, you could donate to this fund. The second fund is Bainbridge Community Foundation's Ideas Fund. And this fund, not only does this fund support education and grants throughout the year to support inclusive, diverse, equitable, accessible social justice issues. But it also partners with the community grant cycle, and $10,000 annually from this fund goes to support applications that reflect this work. Last year, we supported 5 different organizations with $2,000 grants that went towards their full award. I'm not sure how we're doing it this year. There's been some discussion. It has not been completed. And then lastly, the BCF Klasky Award for Collaboration Innovation Fund, and this used to be called the BCF Trustees Award, was set up in remembrance of Shel Klasky, who is a former BCF board member and highly involved BCF Grants Committee member, and it's in his memory. He passed away a few years ago, and he really valued collaboration and like to look for those little sparks of innovation in these applications. And this fund is usually funded by donations from the BCF Board of Trustees, staff, some of our grants evaluation team, and the public support this specific fund. And we try and fully fund one application that really exemplifies those ideals through the community grant cycle.
Those might be funds that would be designated that might not yet show up.
Exactly.
On the roster or whatever.
You got it, Reed. Those are some of those funds that we receive towards the community grant cycle that have not been allocated yet and are not reflected in the online grants catalog.
You can be sure I'll be watching BainbridgeGives.org pretty closely the next few weeks. And I want to thank you very much for describing this for us, because I think that any way to get sort of the whole picture out to the community is great.
That's wonderful. I wanted to just quickly add that all donations through BainbridgeGives.org, all credit card fees are paid by Bainbridge Community Foundation, and 100% of the donation goes to the organization that you select. If you can select more than one, and we accept donations from $10 on. So we really try and hope that families get involved so that all levels of philanthropists can support our communities, whether it's at $10 or $10,000. They're all super valued and appreciated by us.
We talked with Tracy Pico Denglinger about One Call for All at the other end of the year, and she was talking about families that get together and look at what the programs are and talk about them and then make that donation as a family decision. And clearly you can call up this webpage and start to have those discussions, or watch your mailbox and look at the printed flyer in there, or the Kitsap Sun, and get more information.
Indeed. Thank you, Reed.
Thank you very much. Have a lovely weekend.